I think we are live. If you want to kick us off, Trey.
All right, welcome everyone to Fridays are for Founders, an event we have every week, trying to help entrepreneurs, small business owners, and people sort of going through this process of dealing with COVID-19 and the coronavirus, the pandemic, and how do I respond to this? How do I keep my business going? What things should I be thinking about? And then what we do every week is just bring on different experts. And those experts come in and share from their own experiences, what they're going through, the decisions that they're making, and how they're, dealing with all that's going on right now. And the hope is that through this, we together can ask questions, get answers, and get some suggestions from experts that are from a different place than we are in our businesses. And so my name is Trey Bowles. I'm co-founder and chairman of the DEC Network. A little bit of information. Today is the 7th anniversary of the DEC Network, which was started on June 12th, 2013. So it's a very exciting day for us.
Wow.
And our co-founders, Jennifer Conley and Jeremy Vickers. Jennifer still serves on the board, and Jeremy's down in Waco doing some amazing things in their community. So excited about that, but also really excited. We were actually not here last week. We took a week off to think about and remember George Floyd and all the things going on in our communities. And so now we are back, and I'm excited to invite Cameron to our community today to get things going. We're excited about what the next hour is going to hold, and would just encourage you to participate, ask questions. We will be handled and led by our wonderful moderator, Delanie Majors. And if for some reason you see something on here and you think somebody you know should have absolutely seen this, if they didn't, we're going to make this available to send out. And then we have a partnership with the Dallas Morning News and for DFW, where we able to send this out every week and try to get this word out to more and more people and help them in any way that we can. So Cameron, thank you for being here. So good to have you. I've known Cameron for a while now, and the wonderful work that he's done in a lot of different ways, but BuzzShift, namely what they're doing there. I would love for you to take just a couple of minutes to introduce yourself, talk about your background, and kind of what got you to where you are today.
Sure. No, thanks for having me on today, Trey. Really, this is a great experience to be able to sit down with you and the deck, and like this is dear to my heart of the whole community of Dallas here. So, honestly, I've been an entrepreneur, technologist, kind of creative kid. I've ran 3 tech and marketing startups over the past 20 something years now, and through the .com all the way to now. And for the last 10 years, I've been running a digital growth agency. So myself and a guy named Eddie Badrina, we came together 10 years ago. So this year is our 10th anniversary of BuzzShift. And actually, we actually started an agency because we thought that agencies were broken overall. And it was kind of weird to start an agency because we thought agencies were broken. But we saw the need, we saw the problem, and we basically said, most agencies are order takers and instead of just strategic thinkers. And so we saw this, business consultancies were doing this thing, BCG, McKinsey, Deloitte Digital. They were really thinking about driving growth for the business. And then the advertising agencies were very much like doing a lot of creative and media buying and some strategy and everything else. So we're like, what if we blended the two between business consultancy on the front end and an ad agency on the back end? Then we're actually accountable for growing a brand, but we're strategic thinkers versus order takers. It's kind of like the mindset of like basically going out and, the whole client agency relationship has always been, basically it's like I'm a patient and the patient goes and hires a surgeon, and the patient's like, yeah, just cut me open here. And the surgeon's like, no, let me do my job, kind of thing. So I think that, what we've really learned is to be more strategic thinkers and be, accountable and focus on growth. And that's what we've been able to do for the last 10 years. Got to work with, amazing early stage startups all the way to industry leading brands. So that's that.
That's great. And so what an interesting, concept of when we take everything down to the roots, what really a business is about is it's about finding a problem, solving that problem,
Yeah.
with building a product or service, selling the product or service, and then maintaining those client relationships. And so I think something that you saw, which was a need, as something that was broken, you thought, well, why don't we create a solution for this? And you guys have an interesting story of that process and how that's gone and what success looks like and gets to, and the opportunity to come back and do it again, which has been really exciting. And I think it's just important for people to hear and understand that story, so they can really just appreciate the nuances of entrepreneurship. We always tell entrepreneurs, look, we're all the same in some way, shape, or form.
Sure.
Our circumstances may be a little different. Our product or service may be different, but not who we are and the things we have to deal with. We have to deal with the same. Everybody got hit in the face with COVID. It's not just, small businesses versus large businesses. How are you guys addressing COVID, and how's that affecting your workforce? Did you file the PPP? Like what have you, the process you guys have gone through?
So great question. I think overall, to address the first part, most entrepreneurs, the real entrepreneurs of this world are the ones who focus on the problem solving and not the product. They focus on the problem, not the product. And the ones that I think are kind of like aspirational or kind of entrepreneurs, they get obsessed with the product and they kind of forget about the problem. So they build something for like 2-3 years and they're tooling, they're dabbling, and then they're like, but they haven't tested it. They haven't even got it out to the market to see if anybody actually wants it. So there's a lot of people building products that people don't care to use. And so I think that, truth be told, the biggest secret is just focus on the problem, not the product. The product will be defined by the problem itself. But how we've been handling it, it's been interesting. I think it's a huge shift, and that's kind of my key word here is shift. It's a shift in mindset. It's a shift in approach of how we go to market. It's a shift in how we work. It's a shift in consumer behavior. Everything is shifting, and so how we've been able to handle it as a company, and then what we've been doing to advise a lot of our brands is, right now is the most opportune time to pause, reflect, and rethink, like, what is your go-to-market strategy, right? Because what your go-to-market strategy was 2 years ago, even 6 months ago, is going to be different than what it is now. So I think that truth be told, a lot of brands and a lot of companies and a lot of entrepreneurs are kind of, putting forth the same tactics that they've been doing for so many years. And even large enterprise brands are having to make a hard pivot, and this whole world of this agile mindset to be able to think, how can we pivot this, big moving ship? So even if you're an enterprise brand, I think you have to think like an entrepreneur. And there's this founder psychology that a lot of people don't have inside of these bigger businesses. And so they're bringing in, consultants and everything else to really help them kind of navigate the waters. But, I got to give kudos to a lot of different amazing brands that are, have all that. Marissa Mayer says PB&J, process, bureaucracy, and jams, right? These big brands have this PB&J all over the place. And I think that there's been a lot of great brands that have been able to pivot. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of, like, if you're a middle-class retailer now, or even Neiman's here locally, I don't want to bring up specific brands, but like, there's a lot of brands that, have been unable to make that pivot. And I think it's just really dialing in on that product market fit. So kind of getting that Andreessen mindset of like dialing in on like what works now. And, I can give you quite a couple examples of things that, we've been doing for our clients. One of them real quick is, we take a brand like, I have a luxury jewelry brand that we work with called Akola, and it's Akola.co. And they do a lot of mission-based things for women in Uganda, and they do some amazing things. And their jewelry is amazing. But the last thing women are thinking about is wearing luxury jewelry in the time during COVID, right? And so what do? They actually made a hard pivot in selling these bead kits, these bead bracelet kits that mom and daughter, or mom and son even, can enjoy. Like, it's an experience that they can create these bracelets together. So it's a kit that they could just create something together. So like, that's their number one selling product right now. Like, and it's crazy, but what's interesting is just so many brands that we've been working with have been able to make this hard pivot, but it's because they paused and did some reflection and kind of rethought how do we go to market now? Like, what does that look like, right? So that's kind of ultimately that's the biggest opportunity for all brands right now, is to pause and reflect.
Well, and so that the example with the cola is a great one. Like seeing an opportunity, understanding their customer needs, understanding the opportunity. What process would you take? You know, me as an entrepreneur trying to figure this out for my own business. What are some of the things you would tell me to do so that I'm effectively making those right decisions, that I'm pivoting in the right way, that I'm being agile and responsive, but also leading, you know, in the marketplace as well?
So, I mean, the biggest thing is having a lot of empathy, right? This is the first thing I'll say, is that you have to understand that every person out there has a different relationship with your brand. And what brands were doing in the past is, you know, it's the spray and pray model. It's a traditional ad agency model, even of creating the singular message and then just pushing it out there, and everybody's getting that. In the world of digital and everything else now, we can look at all those different touch points. And so I think that you have to realize that, you know, everybody has a different relationship with your brand. So like if they've never heard of your brand, what's the best way to, you know, approach somebody that's never heard of your company or your product, but know that you know, they should know about you. And you're like, oh, if we could just target these people and go after these people, then what is that message? That's way different than somebody that, you know, has bought from you before or is a part of your ecosystem or whatever. And so like, what does that messaging look like? So what I think what's happening is brands are pivoting to this from a singular message theory to a very customer centric theory of saying, you know, what are all these touch points with my brand? You know, awareness, consideration, conversion, all the way through to loyalty and advocacy and everything. So like thinking through all these touch points of the customer journey, they're getting really focused on what is the message that we want to tell and what is the experience that the customer really wants to get. So I think that the brands that are making it are focused on building an experience, and there's a lot of creativity going into that. And the brands that are not are becoming a commodity. And if you want to separate yourself from the pack, you got to get creative. You got to be thoughtful. You got to be mindful of, you know, where do you need to make that pivot and what does that messaging strategy really look like? So I think it really gets into your messaging.
Well, and I think so. I think you've moved me into what sort of main topic I wanted to focus on with you today. And Delanie, please feel free to jump in whenever I give you the opportunity to. I just get excited. I'm learning. I'm hearing. And so I want to get. I need to make room for you to ask questions too. But talk to me about creativity. There was a survey done several years ago that I always refer to, by IBM, and they asked 1,500 CEOs what the number one quality or skill set that they looked for in an executive, and the top answer was creativity. And so as we think about all the things that we're going through and think about how do we cut cost effectively during this time, what's a way to generate revenue, how do I pivot to support, building a bead kit for mom and child to work on together, how important is creativity, and how do you foster or find creativity, especially when we're in a situation where a lot of people are just bummed, right? Like life is not what we thought it was going to be. In 2020, 6 months ago. So how do you guys think through that and work through that at BuzzShift?
Yeah. So, I mean, creative is the one variable I can say that, like you think about digital, like marketing overall, there's a lot of these marketing to grow your brand. There's a lot of activities you have to do, and there's media buying, and there's all this SEO and building websites and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, the creative is probably the number one variable that is either going to make or break you versus another brand, or at least make you be the key differentiator. It's like, what are you leading with here? So I think that from an individual standpoint, how to hire on that, I think you need both. I mean, I will tell you this. I think you need a person that's a creative problem solver. So they're looking to solve problems and how quickly they can solve problems. So like, when a lot of people think creative, they think about the look and feel and design and tone of voice and all that. And that's one part of it, right? But I think that problem solving is the biggest part of that. And so if you can be a great creative, everybody's creative. But the fact is that if you're a good creative problem solver, then that puts you in a whole different category that you just that you look for. But to say that is that person who can think like that a lot of times cannot always execute on a lot of those ideas. So what I've seen is, it goes into the whole myth, but from a scalability and building and everything else, I think a solopreneur is kind of like a self-employed person a lot of times. So I think you have to build yourself with the right team and understand what your weaknesses are. So the best way in my mind is to really, one, take a strengths finders test, really look at how empathetic you are as a human. And two is surround yourself by the right people. And I'll just tell you, like Eddie Badrini, my co-founder, he's a synthesizer, right? He's the guy that is the process and kind of the gel, and I'm the visionary kind of go-to-market creative strategist over here. And him and I are very much yin and yang, and it just works really well together. So, if you're finding a good, if you're trying to do everything yourself, I guess, then that's not the best way to become creative. If you know that you can kind of surround yourself and understand what your weaknesses are and surround yourself by those other strengths, then that's the quickest way for you to start problem solving. So I don't think you should tackle everything and become a unicorn yourself. I think that it's a more of a collaborative effort. And I think the best brands in the world are the ones who can get on the whiteboard like the one behind me. And, you have the right people, the right mix of people to ask the right questions, because that's what it starts with. Creative starts by asking the right questions. Most people are just trying to be all tactical. They just want to like go and build and do. And I'm like, no, let's ask the right questions up front. And so I think that it's that discovery period where creativity really comes out.
Well, I think you make a good point. I mean, I remember when I was younger and we were growing up, the idea was figure out what your strengths are, figure out what your weaknesses are, so you can get better at your weaknesses.
Yeah.
Right. And then what we've learned over time is that's not the way to go about it. Your weaknesses are weaknesses for a reason. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
You're not going to get better at them,
Exactly.
or it's not used to spending that time. And so look at your problem solving, approach with bringing in right people that are different than you, that have different skill set, and being okay with having that self-awareness to know, look, I'm good at this and I'm not good at that. And that's not a character flaw. That's just
right.
that's just who I am. And so I think I wanted to pull that out from what you said as just being something that's really, really insightful and really, really important. Building a team, and specifically when we're looking at where we are today and what's going on in the world, the team you have moving forward and getting you through this and after this is going to be exceptionally important for your ability to not only survive, but thrive during this time.
Totally. And I think that, a lot of people are having to, what I would say, optimize their team. I think the sport you were playing, I always think about sports, but I'm like, the sport you were playing as an entrepreneur before COVID is a different sport. It's like you were playing volleyball then, now you're going to play golf or whatever. Like, I mean, literally, maybe that's not the best one, but I'm just saying you're playing a different sport. And so like a lot of times looking at your team and yourself, and again, Eddie always says, draw a line around yourself. And I think that's true, is that, really be thoughtful about, okay, what am I contributing right now? And are the people around me the right people to take this thing to the next level? Because it's just that's where you gotta really be honest with yourself. And I think that self-awareness is key. And if you're not self-aware and empathetic, those are like the two things for me, like self-awareness and empathy. Like that's it. Like you can go really far with those two things. For sure.
You mentioned a little bit about optimizing your team, and you kind of touched on it briefly, but what do you really mean by that, and how can we do that during COVID? In some cases, it might be out of a necessity, but how do we even continue to do that after COVID once we begin to grow our teams a little bit more? Explain a little bit about what you mean by that.
Yeah, I mean, a couple things. So let me bring up two things on that. One, I would say that for us, it was about really thinking through, like, what are we really focused on? Because as a brand, BuzzShift's always focused on helping, B2B and B2C and doing a lot of different things for a lot of people. And coming out of last year, in 2019, we really said we want to refine ourselves and not be we want to be vertical agnostic, but at the same time, like, be hyper focused on doing something really, really well. And so you can systemize things, right? So part of that is all about scalability. And so we pivoted hard into direct to consumer, which honestly, as a company, we're very, very fortunate as an agency, honestly, to be where we're at right now. And so do we take a little bit of a hit for paid media dollars for a period of time? Yes. But overall, we're on the up and up now. And so but there's a lot of, other fellow agencies, peers and everything else I respect really well that actually lost their business during this, right? So there's a couple of agencies that completely went out of business. And so we're very fortunate to kind of pivot into direct to consumer, but we kind of had this foresight to really focus on e-commerce. We saw this huge next wave of e-commerce is going to be more important than ever. And that's just where we had to pivot. So becoming a Shopify partner and, all these different things. So then our skill sets are changing, and so a lot of people, we think, people can always learn new skills. So the cool thing is we have a great team that's willing to adapt and to kind of make their own pivots to saying, I was doing this before, but now I'm actually gravitating over here, which is awesome because that's where the agency's gravitating as well. So I think that there's a part of it is just being the willingness to adapt, right? I think as a person, it's not like the old days where you just, sign up to be a CPA and then you just be a CPA your whole life. Even that is evolving. And so you just, your career is evolving daily right now, and your roles and responsibilities will change, and the willingness to be able to adapt is huge. So that's one part. The second, I would just say, even with this Black Lives Matter and everything going on right now, and man, this last week and a half has been so heavy on us, and we've been really thoughtful and mindful about the situation of what's going on, and it just this is a huge opportunity in the world of agencies. One of our African American employees on our team, who happens to be our only African American on our team, by the way, Deja, we've been putting together an entire initiative for ethnicity and inclusivity on our team because, it's been super interesting of who's been applying, and then I go to North Texas and TCU and SMU, and I'm what can we do at a grassroots level to focus on inclusivity and diversity? Because I think it's something I just say it's across all these industries. But the advertising industry overall has to fundamentally change, and I want to be on the forefront of making that change. And so we have a whole dedicated committee that's focused on building out this, because even the way we hire around that, diversity, it's something that's always we've been mindful of. But I think it's just our applicant pool. How can we be more proactive? How can we be more thoughtful and everything else? So there's a lot. It's not just COVID, it's this as well. And I think that it's such a good time for every brand to pause and reflect and think about internally, how do you hire? How do you make that one of your core values? Just things need to change. And so ultimately it's driving business growth, but it's also bringing inclusivity and diversity. So it's a both and now is a great time for you to pause and do that.
That's awesome. I do want to pause a second a little bit on our topic.
Yeah.
We did have a question come in, and then we'll get a little bit back to creativity and kind of what we've been talking about the whole time. But Lisette did ask, what is the best way to advertise your business if you just started in the middle of COVID-19? And also anybody else who's watching, feel free to post your questions in here, and we'll take time to pause here and throughout the chat to ask some of y'all's questions. So yes, what is the best way to advertise your business if you just started in the middle of COVID?
Yeah, so I think it's on the advertising front, I think it's it's the same kind of answer that I always kind of have said. Honestly, it's go where your people are. And so who are you going after, and like, where are your people? And ultimately, from a cost per acquisition and everything else standpoint, Facebook and Instagram are still like our top two players in the space. We're seeing a huge uptick in connected TV, which is a big one. That you think about during COVID, post-COVID, the amount, like, you'll see a couple stats come out here in a couple of weeks, because I've got a little bit of insight on it, but just the amount of cord cutters that are happening. How many people have a Roku device and Apple TV, and they're barely watching TV right now? They're streaming. People are finishing Netflix. No, but I mean, ultimately, I think connected TV is our next big. It already is the biggest second opportunity, in my opinion. And so I'm agnostic to the channels, but at the same time, like, depending on your product, what you're trying to sell, and everything else, I still think the most efficient and effective place to be is still on Instagram and Facebook. But again, a lot of people say, well, I tried all this stuff on Facebook and then it completely failed, right? And that happens all the time. And we get those people come in, and it's because they didn't have the right strategy, the right messaging. They're trying to sell people. And I'm like, don't try to sell people on stuff. Build a relationship. And so your awareness ads are not trying to sell people a product. That's the last thing. It's how can I add value back to your life, right? That's it. It's a value exchange conversation. And so, like, you're trying to entertain or engage people and not try to sell them on your product. And so I think that, a lot of people, when I answer that question, which I get a lot, by the way, and I say Facebook and Instagram, they're like, well, I tried that. And then typically I go and audit their campaigns, and I'm like, oh, like, wait a second, like, y'all were just trying to sell them on this product, and it's super bottom of funnel, and like, and it's like, let's date each other a while and then we'll get married, versus like getting married on our first date kind of thing. And so it's just like, doesn't make sense. Yeah. So I think it's how people nurture people is the key thing there. So it's just, from a creative standpoint, there's a whole kind of strategy on how to do Facebook right and how to do Instagram right. But I think we're all learning, like, every day, new things. Like, I'll just tell you, like, our strategies of how we've, even work with Facebook and Google has changed dramatically over the last 5 years. And I can pinpoint, like, every 6 months, it seems like there's this major inflection point of something where we have to make a pivot. And so I think, again, the set it and forget it mentality of building something and then just launching it and then saying that's our strategy for the next year, that's not what I'm saying as a go-to-market. And so if you know the kind of waterfall method versus agile, taking one from the development world, I think we as marketers, we got to think more agile. When we got to think like test and learn and test and learn and test and learn and see what works, and then say, okay, well, that's working. Let's double down on that. So it should be very much a crawl, walk, run strategy, as far as like, how do you, from an advertising standpoint, don't just put a bunch of dollars in something and that's spaghetti on the wall kind of theory. And so that's where most people have gotten burned on Facebook, is they put, tens of thousands of dollars in Facebook and they're like, oh, I didn't get I had negative ROI on that, or my ROAS. And so typically they're not crawl, walking, and running. That's the biggest challenge.
And so if you were talking to somebody, I mean, do you advocate for marketing right now, like buying ads right now? Is it a good time to do that? And B, yeah, so let's assume we don't have tens of thousands of dollars to spend. We're not a big brand. We're starting a new company. So our revenue's low. What's a budget that you think is realistic to really be able to drive any sort of real data to make decisions off of? And is that based upon dollar amount? Is it based upon time? Is it based upon channels that you market through? So those two questions.
No, great question. Great question. So should you be advertising right now, like today? That's a hard conversation. Last week, even during all this, like, I'll just tell you, like, last week, if you were advertising during what's all happening, it was kind of like, what are you thinking, right? Like, you're insensitive. And so I think you got to be a little bit like thoughtful. You got to be very thoughtful. And so we're an advertising agency. Like, we called every single one of our clients and told them to pause all of their ads. Like, I mean, that it's not about making money and everything else. It literally at that point is like doing the right thing. And it's always about doing the right thing. And I think that like, so you got to kind of think about your timing on things and be thoughtful on like, let's focus on like, let's not get this, the message overall, even during what's been happening. I was really worried about, even with the rioters and looters and everything else, that the message of what is that matters right now is going to get diluted because of what this is happening. And I'm like, thank God it hasn't. And I think we're going to move in a new world, and it's going to be amazing. But I'll just say that on the advertising front, you were asking about budgets. I think that's the biggest problem that marketers have. It's not a marketing thing. This is a business thing. And so it's not a budget conversation. And so what I really can't stand with brands is that they say, oh, I've got X hundreds of thousands of dollars or whatever else for my marketing budget this year. Okay. But again, going back to asking the right questions, it's like, well, where do you want to be 3 years out? Do you want to, you want to sell and exit? We've had 7 exits in 3.5 years. Eddie and I have with BuzzShift. And so we're looking at this going, no, it's about always asking the right questions. So where do you want to be? So if they're top line, maybe it's a top line revenue number, if they want to be at 5 million top line revenue, okay, let's reverse engineer how you're going to get there and then figure out what the investment level is to get you there, right? So it's an investment conversation versus a budget conversation. And so I think that the brands have kind of said, yeah, let's just put, X $100,000 into marketing. And that's a joke. Like that's the old school world of thinking. And I think that's still what a lot of VPs of marketing and directors and everything else kind of have. It's like, oh yeah, I've got this, here's an extra $150,000 or whatever. And it's like, okay, but let's focus on going back to being a growth agency, let's focus on what our goals are, what are our objectives, what are we trying to achieve? And then we'll say, okay, if we invest X, we'll get Y in return. And then let's focus on accountability. And I think that that's where one thing that advertising agencies overall need to step up is focus on accountability, and not just, oh, didn't work, then, it's like, thanks, or whatever else. So I think it's about a long-term partnership. It's about building a long-term relationship with your brands and thinking about it from an investment mindset, not a budget mindset. So that's kind of where my mind's at. So it really comes back to that. So everybody's like, what's the right spend on Facebook? I'm like, well, if you're trying to get, $50,000 in MRR, that's way different than $3,000 in MRR, and you're a hobbyist brand or something like that, right? So monthly recurring revenue, by the way. So like, it just depends on what their goals are. And so we just build a pro forma and back engineer into it. And then that's how you figure out what your budget should be, or your investment should be, excuse me.
So beyond investment, and even, you talked, I think for you, if I'm hearing you correctly, it's not about the lowest budget option, it's about the most efficient option.
That's right.
And the most efficient option for your goal. What are some other just efficient options out there for people on a low investment spend situation right now and who are bootstrapping it? Whether some, you talked a little bit about working efficiently on Facebook and shifting. What are some other efficient ways or efficient tools or people can use when they just don't have that large investment spend right now?
Yeah, I think again it goes back to you can spend, $100 a month, and I think testing and learning is key right now. And so, like, for instance, like, you don't have to have a lot of money to spend on Facebook. That's what's so great about the platform on that level, is that it really starts with like pennies. Like, I mean, you're like, I want to start with $10 a week or whatever else. Okay. The challenge is that we're in the fight for attention right now. And so we live in the signal versus noise type world. And so the challenge is to cut through the noise, right? So a lot of times what brands are doing, instead of going like kind of just nationwide and all this stuff, they might test a very small market and hyper focused on like a small area and see what kind of traction and everything else they can get in a small area. So again, I think thinking with a crawl, walk, run mentality is key. But the other side of this is there's a guy named Taylor Holiday that runs a group called Common Thread Collective, and he was bringing up this thing called a 4-quarter accounting principle. And it's like, not to get all deep in it, but I would look it up if you guys haven't. It's basically like, a quarter OpEx, a quarter of cost of delivery, a quarter of that's your CAC, and then a quarter of that's your profit. And so I think it's really about like, what are you trying to achieve from a profitability standpoint? And then, instead of investing like so much, maybe say you're selling a physical good, like a skincare product or something like that. A lot of people, what they did is they put all their money into the product. Okay. Well, I think where you have to get scrappier is say, half of that money should be going to growth, because when you're investing in product, you're not investing in growth, you're building. Okay. So there's a different mindset between building and growing. So if you are in the phase of just building right now, where you're just kind of, I'm about to launch a brand, like my wife and we're launching a wellness brand, and that's happening next month. Right. And so we're going to be launching this really, I'm very excited about it because, as an entrepreneur, I'm doing this bootstrapped. And so I'm that key person right now. But the main focus is, as an entrepreneur, I know I want better sleep, I want more energy, and I want less stress. Like, give me those three things, I'm pretty good. And maybe with some immunity now with COVID. So we said, let's build this wellness brand. But instead of like, ordering a traditional, like from an MOQ or a minimal order quantity of tens of thousands of this product, let's start really small and do some validated learning. So let's order 300 of those pieces or whatever, right? And then like, yeah, you have to pay more for those up front, right? Like your cost of goods sold is more, but you can see if people actually like your product, right? So what I think, and then I can take that other money that I would have spent towards my COGS, I can now put that towards media dollars. So it's being very mindful about how much you're, like, if you're a retailer, for instance, how much money are you building out the building, like, or the build out cost and all that stuff, right? Beyond the TI, like what is all that stuff you're putting in furniture wise and all that stuff versus how much dollars are you actually focusing on growing the company? And I think too many people put it into the foundational pieces and not into growing, right? So there's foundation and there's kind of growth. And so I think it's splitting that really clearly and saying, we got to have that money allocated towards growth, right? So, I mean, the cool thing is it is never been a better time to start a company than right now. Like, I think this resurgence of entrepreneurship is going to be through the roof over the next couple months. And we're going to see it just skyrocket, right? A lot of people are being forced out of their jobs. And I mean, look at the unemployment rate and everything else. People are becoming creative because in the time of fear, that's when clarity happens, right? I mean, people can see, they're like, man, and they get scrappy and they get lean, and then they think so creatively. And so that's what I appreciate so much about entrepreneurship. Now, you're playing a game though. You're going from ADD to OCD, okay? So it's one thing to build and start a company. It's another thing to then take and scale it. And so I think it's just making sure you're putting a couple dollars aside to focus on scaling and not just putting all of your money into that initial pot. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think that's good. I think one of the things we've said on this program before is the idea that necessity is the mother of invention, and that's kind of where we are. And I think we often misunderstand that entrepreneurship is about people who want to set out and change the world. A lot, to your point, a lot of entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs because they lost their job or something happened, and they had to figure out how to make a way for themselves and how to have a business, and they learn as they grow. And I think that's why things like this can be so valuable, because the one thing that an entrepreneur needs most is often the one thing that he or she does not have, and that's experience, right?
That's right.
Not having experience is not a character flaw, right? It is not ignorance or lack of education is not something that you can that is a bad on you thing. It's something that you can fix. But we have two ways to gain experience. We can't buy it over the counter, but we can either earn it, which takes time, money, and a lot of mistakes. I mean, that's how I learned, was I just made a lot of wrong things. I made a lot of bad decisions. I still do, but made a lot of bad decisions and said, well, I'm not going to do that again. Or I could learn it. And that means surrounding yourselves with mentors, advisors, friends, people that will speak into your business. It means listening to programs like this and listening to you saying, hey, don't do this. If you're doing this, if you're building your marketing strategy off budget, you're wrong. Well, okay, that's great. I didn't know that. Let me listen and learn and think through
That's
that.
right.
And so pulling all that stuff together makes a really interesting play. And that's part of why I'll make a shameless plug here for the Fast Start Mentor program that the DEC launched a couple months ago, specifically to help entrepreneurs and small businesses deal with this COVID pandemic. And so you can go to, I think our bit.ly link is bit.ly /Fast Start Mentor. You can go there, you can get a mentor, and you can have somebody like Cameron look at your business and help give you suggestions one-on-one. What a better solution for you as you're moving forward. So I appreciate the 360-degree view that you've taken, Cameron, of who an entrepreneur is and where they can come from, but also what the amazing opportunity that we have right now.
For sure.
As there's so much that can be done and so many things that are changing and so many, initiatives that are going to be happening, that it's a good time to dream and think and build and try. Because there's not a clear point of destination, and when there's a lack of direction and focus and vision on where we're going to be, it opens the door to hopefully level the playing field for entrepreneurs.
Yeah. And one thing I'll just say on that, like, I just to echo you, Trey, like, I think if you're a first time entrepreneur, I can't encourage you more to, get a part and be a part of a program like what the DEC has. I'm very fortunate to be a part of this, and I've been a mentor for years now. And I love, like, honestly, I try to go have coffee with 3 new people a week. And so that's my 3-day week where in the mornings, my Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, or sometimes I'll switch it up, but typically it's Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. And I'll go to Merit Coffee or one of these coffee shops and just want to have coffee with somebody new for, an hour. And then what's happened is I'm meeting with those same people over and over. But I think just getting out there and, them picking your brain. But I also think that what I've learned is that, we live in a world where we don't necessarily have to just build from scratch. That's one thing I would just say is, like, if it's not, we should think with like an assembler mindset versus a builder mindset. So, like, how do I take existing things out there and say, oh, I could take this, and this, and then mesh those together and create this new thing, right? So, back in the day, it was like, oh, we got to have the IP and we got to have, like, it's all this intellectual protocol and, like, trademarks and patents and everything else. I'm like, no, forget all that. Like, build it and go validate it, figure it out, but don't just build it. Like, I shouldn't say that. Go assemble it. And so, and I think that's the better word to use, is maybe assemble it. And so, just because the foundation pieces, like, if you're trying to start a software company, it's like, if I'm trying to create something from scratch, you're doing it wrong. Like, that's the thing. Don't build any software from scratch. Like, we live in this API driven world that you don't need to. And if you're trying to build a physical product, then, there's mechanisms and things out there that I guarantee if you just Google it, you can spend some time and you're like, you know what? Like, that's where your creative problem solving happens. If you can't find something, just Google it. And then you're like, oh, I can put A and B together. And that's where creative problem solving happens, is when you think with an assembler mindset versus that, I got to build it from scratch. Like, it's kind of like our designers, honestly, our creative designers. I don't want them to build anything from scratch. I want them to leverage existing things that are already out there. And then you make all those things happen, and you have something original, right? And so it's that purist mentality of starting from scratch and a blank slate and a canvas. I think that's not the best way to be an entrepreneur. It's a very long, hard road taking that path. So ultimately, scrap something together. Like, if you want to start an e-commerce site, get on Shopify and, you can launch a site. And it was one of the things we did, actually, crazy enough. I'll tell you, I had 3 prominent entrepreneurs here in Dallas, women entrepreneurs, come to me and they said, Cam, we want to start a we want to help all these women entrepreneurs in Dallas. And so it was Tinsley Merrill of Pear and Whitney Rowell of Miracle Milk Cookies and Brittany Underwood of Nicola. And they were like, we want to help support all these women entrepreneurs. And they want to create this box. And so it was called supportherstory.com. And so within 3 days, it's probably not the best use of my time, but I was like so compelled. I was like, I got to do this. And in 3 days, we built a supportherstory.com, website and launched it. And they did really well with it. And they're taking it to New York and a couple other cities. So super exciting to see like all these Dallas women entrepreneurs, like Jamie O'Banion is part of this, and like all these great, entrepreneurs that are just, it was awesome. It was really cool to just be a part of that. But to see something just come together in 3 or 4 days and then launch it, and then it's crazy. So it was really cool to see something like that. So don't overthink it. That's the thing I'll just say.
That creativity, they were forced into a situation, and that, we've talked a little bit about support her story. It probably would have never happened if Corona didn't happen, or not in the same quickness and with the same need for it right at that moment, and that need push them to do it and create this. So I think support her story is really cool. And it's fun to see all those entrepreneurs together. But kind of on that note, this has been an unforeseen, and this has, been a situation that, we can never see coming. And there will be another one, that happens, who knows when, that we never saw coming. I mean, that is one thing that's for sure. There's always going to be curveballs thrown at you, whether it's personally or the world at large. There's always going to be something. So how have you been working with your companies to become more creative, to deal with, what is unforeseen, and to be, obviously you can never fully prepare for it, but how are, you preparing or helping to prepare them to be ready for that next thing that might come out of left field?
Yeah, no, that's really good. So I think that, part of it is having that foresight, knowing, like, for instance, I mean, I'll use this as an example, like, hopefully this doesn't happen, but like, October comes around here, and then flu season kicks up, and then all of a sudden now we have COVID and flu season going on. And so, like, what's that going to look like here in the next, couple months when we potentially are all stay at home again and everything happens again. So, like, I think a lot of our brands, what we're doing is we're kind of thinking about it in the world of like a 2-part strategy of having a mitigation play of like, what if this happens, and so being more mindful of these, of these type of situations, being able to react, though, that's the other thing. So, like, or respond in a meaningful way. So I think that, being able to respond and then be able to come together as a team and be able to make movement and see traction quickly. Because, again, thinking about the red tape, if you're a company that has a lot of red tape and you're like, man, I have to go through like 5 things of approvals to get anything done, then it could be a make or break. So, like, if you're a company that's like that, it has to go through a lot of red tape, it doesn't have high autonomy, high responsibility as employers and as employees. Like, I think that's the key thing, right? Is if you want to build a really great team, give them high autonomy, high responsibility so that they can adjust, right? Not everything has to be ad hoc, but man, they got to be able to like make a maneuver, and it's just like, you got to trust them, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a sense of trust, and there's a sense of autonomy and responsibility, and I think that's the key thing that we can give our employees is just, hey, we're empowering you, right? How can you take this to the next level, and versus everything having to be fed up the chain. And so it doesn't matter. That's why I think you're going to see a lot more flat organizations again versus like this hierarchy and the pyramid and everything else. So I think we're definitely going to see a change in overall just system architecture or hierarchy, I should say, not system, but organizational hierarchy, I should say. Mm-hmm. And I think that is that's fundamentally part of it, right? So if you're going to survive the next round of this, or the next round, a lot of these companies are going to have to make a pivot really quick and be able to be agile and lean. That's it.
Well, in the environment that you're describing that we're in now is very millennial, oriented.
Yeah.
And so for those of us that, even though you and I look like millennials, I'm sure those of us who are not millennials,
that mustache helps, Trey.
Is it maybe
the mustache? I love the stash. I'm glad you brought up the stash. I'm really glad you brought it up. It's looking good on you, Trey.
Thank you. We're trying to. But I think the important thing is looking at what the environment and our in infrastructure and hierarchy or organizational structure you're talking about fits more of a millennial lifestyle and approach anyway, which is good because so many of us, are having a trouble understanding the millennial approach, just like the generation before us didn't understand the way we like to work and whatnot. So I think there's a positive component here about teams and culture and interacting, interfacing, and recognizing. I mean, for me, being completely honest, I hated the idea of my team not being in the building with me, right? Because I wanted to see. First of all, I like the interaction and the ability to sort of rub shoulders and fight for ideas with each other. But on the other side, I was like, well, if you're home, are you really working? Like, how do you know if somebody's going to be working? Well, what we've seen here is that people are probably working too much at home. Like, we need to create boundaries away from not doing it. But it allows us to have that trust factor that you're talking about, that provides the autonomy that you're talking about, that provides the environment that specifically for millennials and around Delanie's age, that's the kind of environment they want to have and participate in. And so it's just one of the the good things that are coming out of this process that we're learning about.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, I can tell you, like, our team, we have just under 30 people and everything, and I would say that they've been the most efficient people in the world. Now, like, I'm looking at, things getting delivered on time, like everything has just like been flowing, right? And it's just like, wow, like our team is super efficient. Where I've seen the breakdown is in collaboration, right? To your point, like, to be able to, there's something like, be able to get on a physical whiteboard or sit there with somebody to do an ideation or brainstorm session or whatever else. There is value in that physical interaction, right? Of just being able to rally and like come together on that. So I do see that, but I think the efficiency level and the ideas are wonderful that are coming out of this. But you're right. Trey, the separation of church and state, of like between your personal life and work, people are working exponentially more hours than they ever were before. And me as a CEO, you're supposed to be like, oh, well, that's great. But honestly, what we're fearing more than anything is burnout. Mm-hmm. And so I don't want them. So I'm like, it's like, you have to go on this walk. You have to go on this mandatory walk. No, but I'm trying to get them to like get out of the house, like whatever I can do to like encourage them in any way I can to get out of the house, go take a walk, go ride your bike, do your thing around White Rock, whatever that is. You're exactly the Melzies is what we call them, the millennials and Gen Zs, the Melzies. They definitely will just keep working, and it's like it'll be 9-10 o'clock, and I'm like, what's happening? Like, no. And so we're really trying to encourage them to even have like different areas in their apartments and their houses, like being more mindful about where they're sitting. I mean, just things like that, because it's like, oh yeah, I'm sitting still at this desk, and that desk is kind of like their dedicated desk for work time, but not necessarily even though it is in their apartment or whatever. So I think it is a difficult challenge there to really, not let them get burned out. Like I that's the last thing I want. So, we're trying to put in, we implemented on Fridays, by the way. Everybody's done it at noon on Fridays, so everybody gets a bigger weekend. So typically we go to summer hours earlier, but we did that right out of the gates. Like, we went straight into summer hours on MELZs, Melzies. No, or yeah, you're right, MIEL. Yeah, that's right. So I think that there's a huge opportunity for you to just say, hey, we're going to work less. They will work more. And it's really about the output and the deliverables, and don't be so focused on hours. Like that's the thing. Like if you're an entrepreneur and you have a team, like don't worry about the hours. Like just focus on the deliverables and the output. Are they getting their stuff done? If not, then okay, then go have a conversation. But like that's about, putting in OKRs, like objectives and key results. Like I think it's huge for us. And so like put OKRs into your system. That's something that's been super effective for us.
Well, so first of all, I need to apologize for keeping you late.
No, you're good.
On Friday, because you guys got out an hour and a half ago. But but we do appreciate you hanging with us.
Good.
For sure. So Delanie, we got time for one more question before we hit the end of the hour. So I will leave it up to you. I will give you the honor.
Well, thank you. In that case, let's go ahead and end it on a positive note. You talked a little bit about some positive learnings that you'll take with your team, after COVID, whether it be about creativity, managing a team, being a leader, marketing, any of those things. What is something you've learned during COVID that you'll take with you and implement and it has been a good lesson learned that you'll take with you through the rest of, this entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, I think that, I will kind of echo what Trey said a second ago. I felt like I'll just tell you, BuzzShift, we have this new, it's not new. It's a 3-story building here at Pearl and Commerce. And actually it's the first African-American hospital in the state of Texas, which is really cool. And we're trying to get a big plaque on it right now and everything else to make it a more prominent,
historical
place
marker
here in Dallas. Yeah, historic. It's already a historical landmark. So we're going to do a cast iron plaque out here and everything else, and we're going to do some really cool things and try to set the tone for a movement of like having more prominent places across Dallas, and see if that spurs something else. But a really cool story about this building. Well, we moved in here, and the whole first floor is common space. The second floor is all offices. I'm the only one here today. And they're literally, we're making it 100% optional. But the third floor is we're building out our production studio. But what's interesting is that like I thought that this would be just a place where everybody just congregate, and that's just what it's going to be. And I think that I was literally going to build a ball pit on the first floor, and now I'm thinking, why would I build a ball pit? And so I'm like, that's a horrible idea. So I learned not to create ball pits post COVID. No, but that would be my answer. No, but really my thing is that, to Trey's point, is that people honestly can work really efficiently and effectively, and they don't have to be physically in the office. And I could put my foot down on that for the last 20 years and say that is not the case. Like they will not do the right thing. They will not get their job done. They will not get their work done. It's not because I don't trust them. It's just that like that's like way too much autonomy. So it's kind of like, it's the trust but verify kind of mentality or something. But I have learned through this process that people are so amazingly efficient, and they get their stuff done. And especially the Melzies, they just get their stuff done, and they love working remote, and they can go put their laptop down on their porch and sit out there on the back porch or whatever. And I think just having that autonomy factor is key. So like I think focus on high autonomy, high responsibility. That's something we've always been tried and true of. Now it's just another level of autonomy and responsibility, and we need to empower our folks and to let them work how they need to work. And so we're keeping it 100% optional to come back to the office for the rest of the year. And so so we're not even, and we're considering, do we even mandate it at all? Like let people come in as they need to, and for photo shoots and stuff like that. But besides that, in strategy sessions, like let's just let people do what they need to do, how they want to do it, and roll with that. As long as they can separate their personal time and work time, we're happy. So thanks for that. That was a great question, by the way.
Yeah, great advice, and thanks for sort of synthesizing some of what we talked about today. I think that's helpful. I think the idea of creativity, being agile, creating autonomy for your teams, and opportunity to grow. And we all learned a new term, or at least I did today, with the Melzies, and that's so I appreciate that. We'll continue to continue to use that. And thank you so much for your time and all you've done not only for the DEC network, but just for the ecosystem as a whole, and the example that you and Eddie and so many other entrepreneurs serve as men and women who are out there doing it, making their companies work, growing, building the economy, hiring people. That's such an important thing that we do in North Texas, and you guys are such a great example of that. So thank you for doing that.
Well, hey, Trey, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate that. But I definitely want to say thank you guys for facilitating all this, because honestly, building community here and this world of entrepreneurship in Dallas, we should not be second to Austin for entrepreneurship and technology and innovation and all. Like the amount of things that are just the amount of amazing people here in Dallas, Fort Worth are just I'm so excited to be a part of this community. I've lived here my whole life, and I've had so many opportunities to move West Coast and even to Austin and everything else, and I've stuck here. And honestly, because of people like you guys, Trey specifically, being a part of this network has been just awesome, and the amount of people you get to connect with. So again, I just encourage anybody that hasn't done been a part of the mentoring program or anything like that, please do it. So thank you guys so much for having me on today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll close with just a couple of things. If you're looking for resources and trying to find out how you can get help as an entrepreneur or small business owner, you can go to letsgrownorthtexasbusiness.com, which is a one-stop shop resource location that the DEC created for that. Second of all, we have the Fast Start Mentor Program. I put a link inside of the chat so you can see that. Go get offer your services to be a mentor for free, or get a mentor for free to help you really set up and grow. And then finally, if you're still looking for money to help your business survive in the age of coronavirus, we have a fund that we're building now our goal is to get to $5 million. And it is open now for applications at revivedallasfund.com. So Cameron, thanks again. Delanie, thanks for joining us on your vacation. And we'll see you next Friday at Fridays Are for Founders.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.